So let's make choux. I've already started by weighing the flours and whisking them together. I highly recommend you use a scale to weigh out your flours. It's much easier and much more accurate. But the most important part about this is melting your fat and your milk together. So you want to do that over a medium heat. We're just going to turn that on and stir it the whole time. That gives you that even heat throughout all of the milk, and this will help when you add your eggs later, so that you get the right amount of egg, because how hot the milk gets will depend how hard the tapioca or arrowroot seed is. So that's where that comes in. So I'm just going to stir this until it all melts up. And then we just watch it, and that melted pretty quick because we had it on there while I was talking. We just watch this until it starts to have little bubbles start to pop up. This is where it's going to look different for every person's pot, how many bubbles you want. So if when these bubbles come up and you pull it and you can't add more than 1 egg or so to 2 eggs, then that means you just needed to wait till more bubbles pop up. And I'll show you where I pull it for mine, and this can vary depending on how hot your stove is, your pot, different things like that. So if you can see, there's some bubbles starting to happen underneath. I'm gonna wait until that breaks into the surface, into a very low simmer, but I'm not gonna leave it there to simmer. I'm gonna pull it as soon as it starts that low simmer. And there I have quite a few bubbles popping through the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that. We add the flour. You try not to spray it all over the place. I'm going to get it stirred. You kind of want to stir kind of fast. You don't want it to seize too much too fast. The residual heat will bring it together in the pan. And then we go and bring it over to our KitchenAid. Scrape it in, put this down, and then you're just going to put this on low. 1 room temperature egg at a time. Once it gets fairly soft, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up. It's got a nice pull. Actually, it's about there. you want it to pull between your fingers like that. I like it a little softer. So what I'll do is, well, actually take a look in here. So it's just got some stickiness to it still. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of already beaten, I'm gonna get stuff everywhere here, yeah. A little to this slowly until it reaches a nice creamy consistency. Stop and check it just again. We want it to fall slowly off the beater. So you can go anywhere between a little thicker than this, and it's really hard to tell on video, honestly, but you'll get a feel for it. Basically, you want to be able to, if you're piping it, you want to be able to pipe it out and have it hold its form mostly. It can spread just a tiny bit. If it spreads too much, you just added too much egg. And then for pizza, you have a lot more flexibility with pizza. It can be runnier with pizza. So basically you're adding anywhere from 2 to 5 eggs. And this I had to add, we had 4 and a half, about 4 and a half eggs. I prefer it around 3 to 4 eggs. So if I can work it out perfectly with the milk, then that's my favorite. So as you can see, it's very flexible. So you have anywhere from 2 to 5 eggs. If you can't fit at least 2 eggs, you needed to heat your milk longer. If you have to add more than 5 eggs, you probably heated your milk just slightly too long. And so you'll get a feel for it. It's kind of like riding a bike. Once you know what it looks like, you just kind of get a feel for it. And you have good days and bad days. I even do. And so we just pull it off. I actually let this batter rest. It becomes less sticky. Now with regular choux, you wouldn't let it rest. I give it about 3 to 5 minutes where I just get everything ready for what I'm going to do, my pans, my bags, whatever I'm using, and then I start to work with it. Okay, so for making pizza, you can make one huge crust. It kind of it would be about as big as this. You almost have to do it like a rounded square kind of thing. But I have found that and that's if you're going to do the My Paleo patisserie way, which you can get in the book, which you bake the crust partially first, and then you make a pizza on it, which you can totally do. I'll put the instructions in the recipe. However, we've been doing this rising crust thing, which makes it a little more sensitive, but it tastes really amazing. It's really beautiful, and it has all the feel of like, you know, the rising crust, like the artisan pizzas, wood fire pizzas. So we do about a cup. You usually get about 2 crusts. It's about a cup of dough, or just half of whatever dough you have, and we'll put it on 2 different Silipat mats. Wipe that off. It's very sticky. So we just find this makes it less soggy in the center because it's not going to be so huge. And then you just begin, and I use one of these little guys. This is a angled spatula. Works 1,000 times better than a spoon. I'll just tell you that now. And you have to rotate it and stuff. And so basically we just make a circle or an oblong. You can make any shape you want. And you can, I don't know if you can see the little bubbles in here. These are little pieces of tapioca that I've seized. Sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't make a difference in the final product. I mean, obviously if you had like huge chunks or something, maybe, but it's just a process of how the tapioca heated and seized up. But that totally comes out, and you just keep working it. So you take your time with this if you want it to be pretty. Basically, you want a nice rim, about this width is pretty good, about the width of your finger. You can leave it thicker in other areas if you want. And you want the center to not be too thick and not too thin. And I know that sounds kind of like not too thick, not too thin. Where do I find it? Well, you'll find it. It's kind of almost like it's not see-through, but if you were to spread it one more time, it would be. That's the only way to explain it. If it's too thick, you'll just have to bake it longer because it'll be soggy until it just takes longer to get crispy. So if it's too thin, it won't be able to hold your ingredients that you're putting on it. After you make it a few times, you become a pro, and every once in a while you have one that doesn't rise right, and then you're just really mad. But that's the case with any pizza making. You know, it's just art. I don't know, that looks pretty good, yeah? So then what I'll do is, once it's kind of the dough's settled in, I'll just make sure it's nice and even so there's not thicker spots. Sometimes I'll wipe that off, and then I'll just reinforce this little crust thing. And this is just because, you know, I'm obsessive. So we're just gonna kind of stick that in there and reinforce the shape of that crust. And so there we go. So you get about a medium-sized pizza when you do the double. Okay. All right, so let's go over and we're gonna go ahead and put the toppings right on top of this. So the My Paleo Patisserie one in the book, we bake it first, and then we put the toppings on, then we bake it again. So you'll see how this one works. All right, for this one, we're just gonna make a simple pepperoni pizza, and you just add some sauce. A thicker sauce like this is best. If it's too watery, it can make the crust a little soggy. So you wanna be gentle about it, because obviously you don't want the back of the spoon to stick to your shoe. It's pretty smooth as long as you just have a light touch. And if you've ever frosted a cake, it's kind of like frosting a cake and not getting all the crumbs to stick to your thing. You want to keep sauce under the spoon all the time. And I actually do a pretty thin layer. That's pretty typical of the Neapolitan pizzas. They're real light on sauce, so they're not overwhelming, and it also doesn't, it helps not make the crust soggy. So we're just gonna spread that real thin on there. You don't have to be this specific. I'm just very... And I usually put a little bit less in the center just because that's the part that's the hardest to get not soggy. All right, then we're just gonna add our cheese. So here you could add goat cheese if you wanted, or you could even just skip cheese altogether and we've thrown pepperoni on it, banana peppers, anything like that, and just have a nice little flatbread. So you don't have to put cheese, but we're gonna put some cheese on here. We love to do a goat Gouda. And again, we don't go heavy with the cheese. This is we put pretty light, about 4 ounces on this little guy. 8 ounces on the bigger one. Obviously, it's just doubled. And so yeah, you want to be able to see some pizza through it. Again, I go a little lighter in the center because that's the place that takes the longest with any pizza to crisp up. Didn't even use all that. And then we're just going to throw pepperoni on there. And I usually overlap the pepperoni because this crust does expand, and it becomes quite sparse if you haven't put enough pepperoni. And finally, for every pizza, we add dried rosemary. You can add fresh, but it tends to burn worse. Rosemary is the best thing, especially on like pepperoni or Italian sausage. Just get that in there. And now it's ready to go in the oven. So let's take a look and see what we got. Ignore my messy oven. And that's what's beautiful about it. The crust just bubbles up around everything. And so I usually remove this guy. You could put it on a cooling rack, which would help it not become soggy as well. If it sits, let's say if you were to cut it right away, let's see if we got it. You want to let it sit for a minute. So you can see kind of, sometimes you'll get air bubbles like that. Other times you'll get real bready, like on this side. It's going to be different all the time. It's going to be good. It's going to be awesome. If it sits here for, let's say it sits here for like 10 minutes and the inside's soggy, just throw it back in the oven. Sometimes with choux, you don't notice if it's getting, you can tell it's pretty good. Sometimes the center won't be quite done. I would put it back in the oven